Keep it going for Pat, everyone.
Hey, guys. About 10 years ago, I was walking down Gay Street here in front of St. Agnes, and a guy ran out of the church and said to me, "I need you." And I was wearing a suit. And then he pointed to another guy who was wearing a suit. I was going to work. He said, "I need you too." We looked at each other and said, "Come with me." And we followed him in, and he said, "We need pallbearers." So we both picked up part of the coffin and walked it in. Now, I knew the other guy's name was Mike, and I'm looking over the edge of the coffin to him, like, how are we supposed to act here? And I felt pretty sad. I looked around the church. There weren't a lot of people there, and I was thinking, well, maybe it's a good thing because the person lived a long time, or maybe it's very sad. And at the end of then I'm sitting there going, do I have to stay for the service? And am I going to miss work? So I stayed for a little bit and just got the guy's name. And then I went and tried to look up the obituary. And that's the pathetic, guilty pleasure I have, is obituaries. And you're all going, yeah, you're old. Who cares? And you all have grandmothers that you call up and you say, your grandmother says, "You know Bob Jones?" You go, "Oh, Bob Jones, he's wonderful. What a great guy. I love Bob Jones. How is he?" "He's dead." And then they say that about all these different people. I've been following obituaries since I was 12 years old. I start every day, I pull out the paper, and I'm a newspaper nut. The first thing I go to is the obituaries. I look through those. Second thing, I go to the comics. I read Pearls Before Swine, Peanuts. I go to sports. I get mad about the Sixers. And then I gear myself up to deal with the depressing front page. That's my order of events. And what do I look for in an obituary? The first thing, I want to make sure it's not me. And if I was Bruce Willis in that Sixth Sense movie, it would have been 5 minutes long. The other thing I look at, I say, look, how old is the person? Is the person older than me or younger than me? I see, okay. Then I want to know why they died. And I get very upset if they don't list why they died. And I become an investigator. And I'll see there'll be tips like, Bob was an avid parachuter. Oh, okay. Then I look at, then I'm fascinated whether they have a picture of themselves or not, and when the picture was. Because some people, you could tell the grandkids pick the picture, they pick them as the old doddering person. And some people, they pick the pictures from 18 years old. I'd like to take like my highlight, but it'd be like 6th grade kickball, so it'd confuse people. Then you look at telltale clues about the person from the obituary. There's actually a book on this called The Deadbeat by Marilyn Miller. I told you, it's a pleasure. Marilyn Miller. She lists, if you see certain phrases in obituaries, you can say who the person is. If it says, inexhaustible raconteur, it means a chronic bore. If it says, fun at all occasions, it's an alcoholic. If it says, flirtatious and fun, it's a nymphomaniac. You can just read between the lines to see what it is. I also look to see if they have any last words put in there. Leonardo da Vinci's last words were, "I have offended God and mankind because my work did not reach a great enough level." So that'll make you feel a little bit about yourself. My grandfather's last words were, in the New York Times obituary was, when his wife asked him where he wanted to be buried, Charlie Carvin said, "Surprise me." I look and see headlines sometimes. The newspapers are tacky. John Bonham, the drummer of Led Zeppelin, died. The headline was, "Rock star takes the stairway to heaven." In a gang shooting in Philadelphia, the headline was, "Man dies of overdose of lead." Horrible. Here's the worst one I ever saw. The headline was, "Man turns into tuna sub." I go, this would be a funny little story. And the story was about Mr. Perez, who was fishing off the Brigantine coast, hooked onto a tube and got pulled overboard. I go, oh my God. And the reason for obituaries like that is it's the people, they put the people who have, it's the bottom of the pole, the totem pole in a newspaper, is the obituary writers. But in Philadelphia, had the greatest obituary writer in the country. His name was Jim Nicholson. He was there for 20 years. And he was famous throughout the country. He was a great investigative reporter and got in a feud with the editor. And the editor said, you know what you could do? You can write obits. And Nicholson didn't quit. He wrote amazing obits. And one of them was, I remember, society doesn't give much worth to a 35-year-old mechanic who lives at home, whose possessions consist of the Miller Lite sitting in front of him at the bar, the Union card in his pocket, and the friend on either side. So, the point about all that is, when my father died, I was the oldest, and I had to call the obituary writer. And I called him up, and the guy was disinterested, bored. And it was New Year's Day. And he goes, how was, and it was sudden. And I didn't give a cause of death. And I just said, yeah. And he goes, what do you do for a living? I go, well, he's a salesman, but he went bankrupt. His philosophy was, anybody can earn $1 million. I've spent it. And the guy goes, salesman, right? And then he said, military service? I go, yeah, he was in the Merchant Marines. And he during World War II, he got bored out Rio. He jumped ship, and he learned how to surf. And the guy goes, salesman, right. And he goes, how old was he? And I told him, and he goes, oh, that's young, huh? And I wish Jim Nicholson had taken that phone call. And the point for that is that Linda Lohman, in Willie Lohman's The Death of a Salesman, his wife at the end of The Death of a Salesman says, he wasn't in the paper, he didn't make a lot of money, but attention must be paid. And the reason for that is every one of us has a story. Thank you.
Pat, everybody.